Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Leadership Rules, where we believe leadership isn't just a role, it's a way of life. Whether you're leading a team, a community, or simply leading yourself, we're here to help you unlock the rules to lead your life with purpose and impact. I'm Nick Caniglio, joined by my co-host, Marnie Stockman, and together we co-authored Lead It Like Lasso and The Business of You, and we're thrilled today to have Anthony Conta on the show with us.
Yes, we definitely are. So first, let me tell you how I ran across Anthony. I was talking to a professor at the University of Georgia, and she was talking about incorporating our book, The Business of You, into her FYE course for next year. So we were talking about impactful activities that her students like to do in her current course. And she said one of the games they love to play is called Funemployed. And I said, wait, what? Funemployed? What is that? I had to chase it down. Now bad interviews. It turns out Anthony designed that game. So I had to reach out. And then here is what else I have learned from Anthony after I got that intro. Designer, author, and the mind behind Funemployed, now bad interviews, a Mattel product. Someone who takes away the messy human parts of life, job hunting, awkward conversations, and figuring out who you are, and turns them into experiences that teach us something while we're laughing. Also wrote The Art and Science of UX Design, that really breaks down how people think and behave, and works as a product designer at Meta. So Anthony started out in economics, worked at Kaplan, created a very cool chess game, so many things. So we're excited to chat. So Anthony, how'd we do on that intro? What did we miss?
I mean, you basically hit the highlights. Thrilled to be here, by the way. Thank you both for having me. I guess the only other stuff in there, worked at Nickelodeon, Amazon, been doing this for about 15 years or so at a variety of different sorts of places. So mentor, taught chess to 3-year-olds. You know, we can talk about that. Or we could talk about a lot of stuff, really. So
yeah. I think that's so cool. Yeah, it is. All right, so we've got 457 questions for you that we should be able to wrap up in 30 minutes. But we like to start with some quick icebreaker biscuits with the boss questions. First concert, best concert.
First concert, Foo Fighters. Best concert, that's tough. Might also be Foo Fighters. Huge fan. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a safe call right there.
That is a popular answer as well. So yeah.
Dave Grohl's good.
Coffee or tea, Anthony?
It used to be coffee, but can't anymore. So it is green tea, matcha specifically. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Dog or cat?
Dog. I have one.
we'll let him know.
Book format, paper, audio, or electronic?
I need it in my hands. You know, it's just got to be there.
Take notes in the margins, anything like that. Okay.
Yeah, I'm that kind too. Leadership, art or science?
Art or science? I'm pretty analytical, you know, pretty logical. So I think I'll go science for that one. Yeah.
Although what I find fascinating is you've created games to help people with a sciencey type of role. So you might be like a closet art.
Both, right? You know, but if I had to choose one, maybe like a 60-40.
Okay, fair. I don't want to argue. I wasn't debating with you. I'm just intrigued by that answer. So here's my first question for you. Lots of jobs, and like you've had lots of different careers, but we always say that kind of how you do anything is how you do everything. So we suspect there's a common thread. So tell us about like the journey and the thread that ties together all of your different types of careers.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot easier to see like when you look backwards what that thread is. Like you see all the dots that sort of like connect. I think, you know, driven in my career, there's that thread would be education, entertainment, games, consumer facing experiences. You know, I went from law and economics, which is understanding like the behavior of people, especially on that economic side, to like interacting with people directly by teaching them, like the kids that I would teach, to making experiences for other people, designing them at Nickelodeon and wherever else for my company. So it's usually that like customer centric, user centric focus, and even the jobs I've had in industry are all on consumer facing products. Yeah.
So we often talk about this notion of, balance between, what your passion is versus what you actually do. Were there early signals? You talked about some of the motivations, the education. Were there early signals? Because people often question, okay, how do I take that first step to actually do what I want to do? Do you have any advice or thoughts on your experiences and what led you down this path?
Yeah, I think just trying stuff. Like I've had like 6 different careers over the course of my career. Um, Being in a law firm is very different than being on the floor teaching someone chess, right? Like messing around with the things that excite you. And we're in an age and industry now where like the barriers are so very low to do that. When I went to college, I originally wanted to do like games stuff,
Hmm.
and I tried like coding, and like that was like way too hard for me. Like C plus was just like not like my thing, and I switched to economics, and I feel like had I had some of the tools that I have now, maybe that transition would have been
Mm.
much faster for me to get back to design and back to like entertainment based sort of experiences. I was just messing around yesterday in like Figma Make and just like tried to recreate like 3 card Monty just to see if I could. And with a couple of prompts, I was able to make that game like immediately, and it was functional and replayable. I think the tools are just so much lower now that people have the ability to just dive in and mess
Yeah.
around with stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So we mentioned earlier that you created the idea. I mean, how we got to know you was with this game called Funemployed, which is now bad interviews.
Mhm.
Um, I'm curious. You have so many games, and you can maybe start with that, or with the chess game, or go to your website, which we'll put in the show notes. You've got a lot of stuff out there, which is pretty cool. But what specifically? I'm gonna stick with Fun Employed.
Mhm.
What sparked the idea? What was it that said I need to create this game?
Yeah. So I always wanted to make a game. I always thought the tools were a little bit out of my reach, especially with like that coding background, engineering background. I didn't know like you could be a game designer just like by having ideas. I thought I had to like be able to build it, whether it be art, whether it be engineering, what have you. So I let that simmer in the back of my mind for a while. Then about 2010, 2011, a friend of mine said he was making a game and he did not have any of those skills. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, how are you doing this? And he told me about a website called Kickstarter, which at
Yep.
the time was like emerging platform for crowdfunding, very popular now, especially in the game space. So I didn't know I could make one. So I just started making one, like a board game, like a physical one. And I tried a whole bunch of different prototypes and did a whole bunch of testing. But that connected me to the New York City community of game development. And it's a very robust community, a lot of people doing stuff, especially in the physical space at the time. And I played a game. And a game, it was about like 2 characters sort of fighting each other. But you had to like describe that fight. Like they didn't actually like you didn't have like pieces. It was like 2 cards. They go against each other. And I thought it was such a fun, interesting experience because it's an improv experience. It like tries to get you to essentially you're just like developing arguments and logic for like sometimes hilarity for like why like your side should win. And I thought about that dynamic and it felt like very approachable for a lot of people, but not like the maximal amount of people. So I took that dynamic of like, how can you advocate for yourself? Because that's essentially what that game is. And I was like, what's the lowest common denominator experience in which you have to advocate for yourself?
Mm.
That's on an interview. Like you have to like
Yeah.
explain why you would be good at something in order to get a job. And I thought that could be hilarious to do if it was like for real jobs, but things you'd like actually never say. Right? So
Some
like
of the cards are just hilarious in and of themselves.
they are right, exactly. So like let's take an example, like an astronaut. Like, oh, I'm applying to be an astronaut, and then like you're handed this qualification of like a lasso, and you're like, how does a lasso make you a good astronaut? Well, I'm a real space cowboy, and you start telling the story of like why you'd be good for that job. And I thought it'd be a great way to just have a lot of fun with friends in like low stakes environments. But what I found is it actually like taught us a lot of like advocating for ourselves and like taught us
Yeah.
how to like form arguments like very quickly in an improv context and think on our feet a lot. Um, by making that game, I feel like I've gotten a lot of that skill just,
Hmm.
you know, like as a transient property of that experience. Yeah.
Form arguments and tell stories,
Mhm.
which we talk about all the time as a skill. It's like a lost art these days, and there are studies all over the place that talk about the impact of storytelling. It's 22 times more effective than just reciting facts. And I'm also amazed that we talk also a lot about improv and the power that improv can actually have in so many different aspects of life. And I find it fascinating that you brought it up in terms of part of your one of the big things that you got out of meeting with that game designer group and just the act of improv. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, life throws like a lot of curveballs at you, right? And just being able to like even your day will just throw a lot of curveballs at you. So being able to think on your feet is a very important skill. Yeah.
That's funny because I was going to ask, what do you think games can teach us about like parts of life that we normally avoid or overthink? So yeah, all of the curveballs. Anything else come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think just like generally, learning a game is like learning a brand new language or system that exists. Like it's its own little microcosm of an
Yeah,
experience.
set of rules.
Exactly right, and those rules like can mirror certain things, and there's certain scaffolding techniques that you can leverage in order to like mirror that more. Like for example, for Funemployed specifically, like it's a job and a qualification, right? And you're building a resume of skills, and like that helps teach you that system. But by playing so many games and exposing yourself to all these different systems, when you have to integrate into another system, let's say a new job, having just started at Meta, for example, like I feel like my onboarding gets accelerated because I have such an understanding of navigating systems because I've exposed myself to them passively all these years.
I that so we worked for a company that got acquired 3 times, and every time we got acquired, the first time I went outside of education and went to work for the business world, ed tech. I thought, what are all of these things? What is a CRM? What is an HR platform? Like I didn't have any of those systems. And by the third acquisition, I was like, just tell me the name of the tool. That one's for, HR. That one's for, okay, fine. I'll figure out the button clicks later. But you're right. You need to know that does, how it transfers easily. Totally makes sense.
Every company has their acronyms.
Oh my goodness. Yes. And fun when you go from one company to the next and they use the same letters, but they mean entirely different things. When we were going to start a business, we were out looking for a problem to solve. And I met a guy I knew a guy who was an MSP, which I thought meant Maryland State Police. It meant managed service provider. They have very different needs. But it was just like, yeah, I get it. That acronym thing's for real.
Yep, and yeah, it's tough. Even like my day job as a product designer, like the name of that just keeps changing. It's like information architect, web designer, product designer, UX designer, UI designer, UX UI designer. It's just it's tough when the definitions change.
So what's at the core of that? Because I think that's like who you are is at the core of that, right? How would you describe it? It'd be a really long badge, maybe.
I think we call it product designer now. I think you have product manager, product designer. We kind of stole the term from the AutoCAD, like physical product designer sort of industry. Unfortunately, sorry about that to an entire industry, but like it just kind of like mirrors and makes sense. And like we're building products in the emergence of this field. It took a while to find out the names of these things and the definitions that like we agreed to as a community. And I think we're just about there. That it's like predominantly product designer. Yeah,
interesting.
I like that. And I think as somebody who's built products, and you've far outpaced me in terms of what you've been working on and also the whole game aspect. But, from watching people either use the products that you're designing or play the games that you've designed, is there any one thing that you've learned about human behavior and that you think, okay, this is unique. This is something that I've learned that I didn't know kind of going in until I started watching people interact with these games or these products. And I'm curious how that connects to your book, the art and science of UX design.
Yeah, for sure. So I think one of the largest like learnings is like I'm not the user, and that's like a pretty common maxim we have in the product design industry of like the way you see things, the thing that you're making, the context that you have. We all just have like completely different human experiences, and I've brought my games and my designs in front of people and watched them use it and just completely blow away my expectations in like both directions. Right? Like people who just like they get it, they don't need anything else, any other description, they just run with it. And then there's people who like can't figure out how to open the box in the way that I've set up the box. Right? Like there's just so many different learning spectrums and experiences that people have. A good example, there was something that we were making at Nickelodeon. We worked on Blue's Clues and other shows like that. It was like those sort of like call and response shows of the 90s, but like on a phone or a tablet instead of on the TV. So like you could actually have inputs from children like playing along with the show. It's called play along video. And we made an interaction where there's a character playing on drums. And, all of the adults that tested this experience they would approach that interaction and see it on the phone. And they would take their two fingers and they tap on the drums, being very delicate with this expensive piece of technology. But when we brought in that interaction for user testing with 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, etc., we put it in the iPad in front of them and they saw a pair of drums. So instead of taking their two fingers, they took their hands and they started playing the drums. And it's a different sort of experience.
Lesson
We
learned.
didn't necessarily expect our audience to have. And that's just what it is, right? Everyone has a different experience, which is why we test.
So right, early is better than later, right?
Early and often, huge fan of iterative cycles.
Yes, iterate, exactly. Okay, so then tell us about how the book fits into that, right? How did it change how you see, did it change how the way you think people think, decide, interact with it, or is it just interacting with 3-year-olds that is giving you that insight?
Oh no, adults do it too. Yeah, everyone.
Yeah.
So I think writing the book was challenging in that, and you two probably have this experience as well. Like whenever you write something or whenever you try to teach someone something, you have to have a very good understanding of it. There's an understanding to be fluent in something. There's an understanding to be able to teach it to someone else. And you really need to know that tightly. You need to understand all of it, not just what it is, but the edge cases and use cases of that thing. So by going through the process of writing this book, I became so much more crisp on the fundamental principles of doing design and doing user testing and research and everything else that I felt myself level up by going through the process of trying to explain it to someone else, which I've seen a lot in my teaching. For you to be able to cogently and clearly explain something, you need to understand it to a level of intimacy and depth that allows you to share it with someone else.
Yeah.
And you two might have experienced that with the books and the things that you've created as well.
So I can't remember if we told you this, but the way we came up with the book, The Business of You, is we were sitting down to write the product requirements for the app that we're building to go with it. Mm-hmm. And as we were starting with the student logs in and I said, this is like writing a business fable. And Nick said, after he ran back from the bathroom and told me I had a terrible idea, he was like, wait a minute, what? He said, yeah, when you said we should write a business fable, I think we should, because you're right. That makes it very clear what the user needs to do if you write the story about it. And the book brings clarity like nobody else's business, especially it's interesting when you're trying to decide what makes the cut and what doesn't make a cut in the book. You really have to understand the critical components of it. So that, what is it? It's the hard thing to do is make complicated simple.
Yeah.
Same thing for.
Yeah. Another way that I think about it from a design context is the design is done when you can't remove anything else. A very simplistic design that makes it much easier to adopt and share with others. I think for my book, I had 600 pages and it became 400, so just a lot on I guess that's another book. Maybe I should write the book. I don't know.
You've already got the sequel.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
So, who did you write the book for, Anthony? Who's the intended audience?
Yeah, a couple of people. I wrote it for myself to see if I could do it. Selfishly a little bit was that.
Yeah.
The intended audience that I wanted to have it were the people that I was about 3 or 4 years after I had written the book. So entering this industry, it's hard. It's hard to enter an industry because the definitions change. It's really hard to break in to product design. The jobs keep getting harder and harder for juniors to find. And I wanted something that just authoritatively told me what I kind of needed to do, gave me those principles, and not just the principles, but even examples of what I could do. So one of the ways the book is structured, I'm a huge fan of hands-on learning. I think just doing it yourself makes the thing stick a lot better and you learn a lot more about it. So it's kind of like a workbook in the sense that I introduce a principle and it's hey, here's an element of design, let's say research. Talking to people and trying to understand their problems. And then I show them examples of that, a user interview script, where it's you say these questions and here's some example questions that you could ask, just generally, from a white label perspective to get yourself started. And then I propose a task for the reader. And I say, hey, go do an interview in this context, in the context of, let's say a solo travel project. So you have to go do interviews and come up with the questions you'll ask people who go solo travel. And then I go one step further, just the back of like an academic textbook, like a math book, and I have answers. And what I mean by answers is a way that I approached that problem. So this is an entire case study that exists through the book, and you go end to end, and I hold your hand and guide you along the way of how to do that. And then I show you an example of like how I could have done it. Not the right answer necessarily, but an answer for that. And that resource felt very powerful to create for other people, because that's like what I wanted to have, because the product design industry is so like case study dependent that by allowing the reader to produce their own case study, in addition to understand the steps of why they're taking all these actions in order to produce that end-to-end case study, would give them a true accelerant to getting into the industry.
Well, two thoughts there. One, as a former math teacher, did you only put the answers to the odd questions in the back of the book? Oh, you're a wild man.
It's so annoying. Why can't I have all the answers? And then I have to do the even problems only because, like,
right. Yeah, I hear you. And then the second piece of that is we work with a lot of folks who are trying to interview and get better at that process. And so to have the book that explains what skills you need to have and actually done a case study way to put a portfolio builder into, their experience. That's fantastic.
Yeah. It was the book I wanted when I started my journey. So hopefully someone else wants it.
So that's, we often get asked writing books, what's the feedback that you want from this book? And I think that could be it, right? It's a book I wish I had when I started my journey. Is there, the odd thing about writing a book is you don't really know who your customers are, right? It's a completely anonymous world. Is there any particular piece of feedback that you got from an actual reader that you're like, well, that surprised me, or that's exactly what I wanted them to say? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, it's kind of like a one-way street, right? Like you don't get the feedback, and it's
Isn't that frustrating?
I did get a very nice message from someone who is a professor, and they said, "I'm using your book to teach like my intro class of like 100 people. This is perfect. It's exactly what I need. I'm not like fully brushed up on UX design, so like this is like the perfect blueprint for me to structure my course." And that's exactly what I do at Pratt as well. I use the book as a structure for the course for my students. And I really appreciated hearing that from someone else.
Yeah. Well, and I love hearing, so my daughter went into marketing and I said, do any of your professors talk about social media? Anybody, right? They've been in that job for forever. So I love that the professor is aiming for like modern day product designer has ideas on the job for sure. And also, we've had similarly, somebody recently has asked, they want to use the business of you in a FYE course for freshman students entering college. And we're like, oh yeah. Okay. That means like the idea is for the right person at the right time because the right people are connecting, which feels good for sure.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm glad you found that audience too. Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Just a random question. Have you ever read the book Reality is Broken by Jay McGonigal?
No. Tell me more.
It's an older book. She's a game designer. It was probably written in the late 90s. But it's all about how to leverage. So I've switched topics on us here. I went back to the game design, but how to leverage the power of games to solve real world problems. And I thought that's very much in alignment with your background, your history. I was wondering if you had a take on the book.
Right. The name sounded familiar. She did the World of Warcraft study, right? Like there was a
yes,
absolutely. That's a huge part of that book. As she talks about.
Yeah, she also wrote Super Better. Is that?
Yes, she did. Yep. Yeah. It's she really is saying we can save the world through gamification instead of saying like kids get off your games, like let's just make better games type of thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tool, right? Like anything, too much of anything can be bad. Like sunlight.
I know.
So the right yeah.
Sadly, I know that one. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say. So we always talk about things from a young person's perspectives, right? And so for students and youth, trying to figure out their path what's one skill that maybe you wish you started working on earlier, and that maybe kids these days should start thinking about or focusing on?
Yeah, I think the ability to just tell a clean, clear narrative would be
Mm.
a very valuable skill that transcends industry. Um, I think it's hard for a lot of people who don't practice their pitch or their ability to communicate themselves or what they're trying to communicate to others. Like if they're trying to show a project or talk about their experience, lots of hesitancy or like long-winded answers or not a lot of confidence even in those answers. So I would recommend just build that one.
Wise
Developing that one,
advice.
through Funemployed, among other things, really did help me out a lot in my career. So, and just like life, conversations
Yeah.
with people.
That
Those
makes
happen less
networking so
often.
much easier. Yeah, for sure. So having reinvented yourself more than once, what pushes you to keep evolving instead of like staying in the safe lane?
Yeah, I'm curious who I can become next. You know,
Mm.
like it's interesting seeing who I have been, and I find what drives me is kind of like a game in the experience level and like the curve of that, and just seeing what that next achievement or accomplishment or objective is. So I'd say a lot of what drives me is just seeing how I can become my maximal self and just what is next for me to accomplish or experience.
That reminds me of the book The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek, right? If you just get somewhere and say you're done, then that feels very flat. But if you always see the next challenge, right, it always gives you a place to grow. The game keeps leveling it up.
Yeah, I love Simon's content. It's fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah, spot on.
yeah.
You have any hints or clues for our audience on what that next might be? Is there anything that's on
Uh,
the burner that you're working on?
is next? No, nothing that I can specifically talk about.
Yeah.
But it's really just exploring the bounds of the technology that is so emerging.
Oh
In
yeah,
Yeah.
so emerging.
so
What do
that's
you think of the technology, Anthony? Where do you think AI is? What's the impact going to be? Everybody has an opinion on this, I'm sure. What's your view on AI and where we're at as a society today?
sure. I get this question a lot in my class, and I have a friend who comes in to like even like teach a little bit about like AI. She's
Mhm.
like an expert in the space, and she always shows this like curve of adoption of like technology, and it's like a roller coaster, and then it like flattens out.
Hmm.
And I don't know where we are yet on that curve.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, are we hanging
Right,
on?
right, exactly, a little bit. So it's like a
We're
very like
screaming.
a little bit of a peak, and it's like whenever new technology emerges, it's like a hype cycle. I think it's called the hype cycle. And you go through this, and you get up to here, and it's like super hype, and like now like all the bad stories come out about it, and then like we eventually like plateau. Not at the maximal point, but I don't know where we are on that curve. I think we're either like up here or we're like over here. I think AI is transformational. I think it like really allows us to do a lot of things faster and opens up the tools a lot more, like with that Figma Make story that I was telling, where I just like made a game in like 10 minutes. I don't think it's going to like end the world in the way that AI 2027 says it will. I don't know if you read
Yeah.
that paper or not, the post. Yeah. If you haven't, listeners, please go check that out. It's a crazy, crazy article. I don't think the world's going to end in like 2 years, year and a half. But it's going to change. It already has changed and will continue to change. The way that I think about it is the introduction of like the calculator. Like if you were an accountant at that time, like here's this like super tool that lets you do things like very, very quickly, or like Microsoft Excel or what have you. It's available for the masses and like everyone can use it and like accelerate their abilities. So you need to learn how to use this tool and technology to accelerate your own workflows and coexist with it. But it didn't get rid of finance as like an industry.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it didn't like destroy the world. And this is a very like simplistic example because AI is obviously significantly more powerful than Microsoft Excel or a calculator, but it just transformed it. And I think that's what we're seeing now: the growing pains of the transformation of a very powerful technology.
No doubt. I think well said. And I think it's clear that you're one of the smartest people we ever brought on this podcast. So thank
You're
you.
far too kind.
Um, so for those that want to learn more about Anthony, tell us where they can find you.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn, Anthony Conta on LinkedIn. I don't, I have the book, obviously. You can find more about my thinking there, the game as well. But I'd say I'm most active probably on LinkedIn and medium.com as well. I do a whole bunch of writing on that platform. Yeah.
And last question, if you had one leadership rule that you believed everybody should know or that you follow.
Yeah. So at Amazon, we actually had leadership principles. They're great, just like generally. It's a really great part of the culture. Highly recommend you check those out. I stand by a lot of those principles. I think within those principles, I really like the principle of bias for action. Like you don't know what you don't know.
Mm,
Just go do something. Just go try something. Um, Take action and don't be stuck in like analysis paralysis. Don't just like randomly do stuff, right? Like give it a little bit of thought. But I find a lot of people get caught in like this, like, oh, should I? What should I do? It's kind of to our point earlier about just like getting started on something. So I think that's a really good one. I'm gonna sneak in a second one as well. There we had this rule of like have backbone, disagree, and commit was like another one that we had where like these two people might not agree on an approach, but after talking about it and like having a conversation as a community, as a group, even if you disagree, doing what's best for the customer, for the business, for the problem that you're trying to solve, and moving forward, even if you're not fully aligned on a particular approach, because you can't stay stuck in that like paralysis.
yeah. Yep. Yeah. Defeating that analysis paralysis is huge for sure.
For sure.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I've very much enjoyed the conversation.
Same. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
You bet.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Anthony. And we will be sure to put all your contact information that you threw out there in our show notes. And we invite everybody to follow Anthony. I know I will on Medium for sure. So
Yeah.
thanks, everybody.
Thank you.